The moment
Yeah.
you start
Well, I'm looking forward to getting into Heart of Hearts, your career in music. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely.
So before we get into the new album and your career, I always begin with this question because it was such a big deal for all of us, especially musicians. COVID, 6 years ago, the pandemic was happening. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach music and life today?
Well, it's an interesting question because I kind of feel guilty. My experience with COVID was actually really positive, and I know that a lot of people, well, a lot of people died, and a lot of people suffered. For me, I was able to basically take it easy. The government had a very well-run program that supported people and kept the economy going, and I learned how to use a music writing software. I increased my piano skills and worked on writing, and so it was really good for me professionally. And again, I know that a lot of people had a really hard time.
Yeah. So let's get into the brand new album, songs exploring love and honesty, Heart of Hearts. Talk to me a little bit about what your vision was, how the idea came to fruition.
Well, what my original idea was that I would try to. I mean, first of all, I'm thinking of the Jazz Messengers, and I think we're all, and also Chicago, the pop rock band,
Yeah.
which was a huge influence on me when I was a teenager. I'm another trombone player influenced by James Pankow and of course the Jazz Messengers through them, and so I thought it would be interesting to do some songs and to have bebop type lines with that horn section, tenor, trombone, and trumpet behind the sung vocal lines. And so that was the original thing that I thought of doing. And then as I started writing and I started putting songs together for it, I realized that I was writing a pretty romantic album. And so I went along with that. And I wrote Heart of Hearts, the title track, which ended up being a sort of a lyrically and thematically just about telling the truth and about how that you're not telling the truth, but people do it anyways. And so, and of course, at the time, I didn't realize how topical that would become, but there it is. So
Yeah.
that's the honesty part. And there's a few other songs. There's a song called um, "Hold Me Tight," and that's my mea culpa to my partner and my experience with her. So I'm kind of writing my truth at the end of
Yeah.
the day. Yeah.
Speaking of that truth, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Well, I mean, I just put it out. I've had a small but very comfortable and rewarding career here in Canada and in Ottawa, and so the fact that the album is getting some traction and people are listening to it is very gratifying, and I'm thinking about my next project. I mean, and how far I'm going to go. Right now, I'm putting together the videos for most of the songs on the album. So I'm working on that right now and getting ready to do a summer of work and performance. So that's what it's been a bump and it's been really gratifying and I'm very grateful for
S-
people
t-
like you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So take me back to your beginnings. How did the trombone, how did the vocals, how did all of this music become your career?
Well, I always wanted to sing, and when I was in grade school, I started singing in competitions. The kind, in London town they asked the way, and this kind of thing. And I'm like 8, right? And so I did that kind of thing. And then when I got into high school, I was already a Chicago fan. And when my high school music teacher asked me what horn I wanted to play, I told him that I liked Chicago. And he said to me, "Well, sing me a line that you like." And I think he was playing me a little bit because he needed trombone players. But he said, "Oh, that's the trombone player." So he put a trombone play in my hand, and I've stuck with it. And then we came fourth and then second in the Canadian Stage Band Festival, which regionally, and we won regionally, and then we came fourth and second nationally. And the second year, Chuck Mangione picked me and put me in the All-Star band. And that same year, for the Canadian Jazz Festival, which I don't think I was really ready for, but he did.
Yeah.
And that year, I went to Toronto that summer to the Stan Kenton Creative World Clinic, that was being held there, which had a huge influence on me. And then I realized that I really wanted to do this.
So, what was the first live show that you saw, whether it was jazz or otherwise, that left an impression?
I can't remember
Okay.
which what that would be.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I can tell you that the first album that I ever really listened to was Santana's Second, which my brother had. I mean, I had older brothers and sisters, and they kind of introduced me to the '60s because I was a child. I was a toddler in the '60s, and they were older. So my sister was into Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Simon and Garfunkel, and that side of things. And my brother was a Hammond organ player, and he was into you know Lee Mitchell and all the great Hammond bands. And so that led me to Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and all of that kind of thing. But what the first I can't give you an answer off the
Yeah.
top of my head. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So I'm curious with the trombone, when you play an instrument for as long as you have, you develop a relationship with it. What have you increasingly loved about this instrument as you've played it over the years?
I love the versatility of it, although of course it has its limitations because it's a slide,
Yeah.
right? But it's the sound of the horn. It's that beautiful mellow sound that still has that punch, and that's why your typical pop horn section includes a trombone because that sound doesn't overpower the tenor sax. It doesn't take away the reediness and that fullness that the tenor sax has, and of course it supports the trumpet and it fits right in there. But you want that punch, you add that trombone, and with those two horns, and you've got that punch. You want that high sweet sound, that was that in the swing era. Tommy Dorsey, is such a huge influence. You've got that. You want that low sound, that big beautiful sound at the bottom of the horn that you hear in every suspenseful movie soundtrack now. You know, blah, there it is. And there's
Uh,
circular breathing to hold it out for 5 bars, but there it is. It's that sound. So it's a really versatile horn, and that's what I love about it.
So what is it that you love the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day? What pushes you to create?
Just the love of music and my gratitude and thrill that I was able to actually do this. And so, like I think to myself, I'm so lucky. I get to do what I really want to do, and I've been doing it all my life. And so, you know, that's what gets me up, but typically not at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So was it always going to be music for you? Did you have any other dreams, any other careers that you thought?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
When I was 15, I thought to myself, this is what I really want to do. Maybe I have enough talent, and I guess I have had just enough talent to be able to get by doing it. And so that's another reason why I'm so delighted at the reaction that Heart of Hearts is getting at this late point in my career.
So I'm curious, when you go into music, you have these dreams of what your career might be like. You have these ideas, and then you start doing it and you're in your career. What's been the difference between what you thought it was going to be and what it's turned out to be?
I thought that I was hoping that I could be a trombone player and that I would be a session musician and I would just play the trombone. That was my dream and play jazz. And I am a good singer. And so that became something that I ended up doing, by necessity financially, but also I began to realize that I had something to offer there as well. And so that's where it went, from just the simple dream of wanting to be an instrumentalist to finding out that I could write songs and I could arrange and I can sing. And so it's all become, that part of it.
And a part of the deal of dreaming about being a musician is you hear about these stages and venues that people play on. What was the first stage that you stepped foot on that you thought, "Wow, I can't believe I'm here and it's happening"?
Yeah, I guess it was the Canadian Stage Band Festival
Yeah.
because that was the first time I was on a stage with that was outside of high school. Suddenly I'm in Toronto. and there's cameras and a big crowd, and there I am playing a trombone solo to I believe a Sammy Nestico chart called Swamp Rock Stomp, and I think it was Sammy, but that was the name of the tune. And I'm up there blowing in front of all these people, and I got a positive feedback, and that was my first real thrill. I had sung in, as I told you, in young as a younger as a child, in these vocal competitions, but I was very naive. I was scared, and I didn't really understand what was happening. But at that point in time, when I got on that stage, that was and Chuck Mangione and others, and so that's when I began to. That was the first time I actually got that thrill, and
Yeah.
and that feeling that this is a way that you can connect, because that is what music is. It's communication first and foremost.
So why do you love this art form we call jazz?
Improvisation and the wide open um, room for creativity that you really don't get anywhere else. Now, having said that, I've put out an album that certainly isn't, as somebody in over in UK said in a review last week, this album doesn't represent any kind of a paradigm shift, and they're right. I'm not going to change the direction of jazz with this album, and a lot of people who are in jazz don't, but still the room to do whatever you want is there. And there are lots of far better artists than me who have changed the direction and have moved the needle. And so that's what I think is really exciting about jazz, is that you can do anything with it.
So if you could go back in time, you could get into a time machine and go back and see one jazz show. Where would you go? Who would you love to see live?
Oh man. Well, it would be the late 40s, early 50s, New York, you know, the original 42nd Street,
Yep.
anybody, I mean, you take your pick, right?
Yeah.
Wow, Monk, but I mean, let's go farther back. There's so many different places where, New Orleans, right?
Yep.
In Storyville, yeah, what can I say, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I hear about old stories of Kansas City on 12th Street. Like in the middle of the day, there was just
right.
like 50 places that were just brimming with music, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
That's the reason why this question means so much, because being in Kansas City, sometimes I'll step out on 18 and Vine and I'm like, what would it have been like 60 years ago just to be right here,
Ah,
you know?
well, I read a biography from Louis Armstrong,
Yeah.
and he said that he had, of course, he had become known in New Orleans, and he was offered a ride on the steamboats that had been revived by a couple of German immigrants called the Streckfus brothers, and they took those old boats and they put them back on the river, and they started going up the river, and they had jazz, and there was a calliope player who was also a jazz player in New Orleans, and he had heard of Louis, and he said, "Come on the boats, get out of here, and come north with me." And Louis wasn't sure, and he says in his autobiography that after a performance at a plantation, he stood in the back and he looked out over the swamp, and he thought to himself, "Well, a lot of my people have had to take that swamp to get out of here, and I'm being offered a first class ride." And so he got on that boat and he went to Kansas City. You know,
Wow.
yeah,
I didn't know that. And I did see a movie on him on Apple Plus, and it was fascinating. And they may have touched on that. I didn't realize that he had come here. But Kansas City was kind of a stopping point for a lot of people throughout all
sure,
those years, you know?
absolutely, yeah. Well, Kansas City Blues, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Fats Waller, right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong there?
Right, yeah. No, no, you're right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Right. And
And I mean,
there's another person you'd want to see, right?
oh man, yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. So at the end of the day, Steve, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think, I think I'm an average musician at best, and I think that I'm a good writer, I'm a good arranger, and I'm a good singer. And so, I mean, I was talking to a sax player that I've been working for years the other night. He's going to come back and do some of the videos. He's on the album, and I was saying, this is probably the best I can do. There'd be no point in me trying to put out a an album as a trombone player and try to move the needle as an instrumentalist. There are better trombone players, but these are the things that I can really do. And so I put this album together, and that's what I did. And my original idea was that I will just try to make a living. I'll do what I really want to do. And I was very much influenced by the Louis Jordan jump blues thing, and of course Joe Jackson put out that album in the early '80s, Jump and Jive, and I put out a band along that line. We went to England a couple of times. Huey Lewis told me to go. I met him backstage he was a really nice guy. He walked right up to everybody, and we were all standing around, and he was headlining the show. I had a van. I moved in this other band. They just hired me to move them into the stadium. So we're standing around, and all of a sudden, Huey Lewis walks up, the headliner, and he says, people think I don't want to meet anybody because I'm famous, but I like talking to people. Hi, I'm Huey. Puts out his hand, starts talking to us. So when I told him about my band, he said, "Oh, there's a big scene in England. You got to go." So that's why we went to England, and I ran that band for 30 years, and produced a lot of albums. And so I finally decided now to do my solo jazz thing, and it's getting some traction. So I'm very grateful, and I'm looking forward to whatever comes next.
So Corey Weeds came to Kansas City about a month and a half ago. I was ecstatic. I love everything that comes out on Cellar Live and what he does. I've always admired him. But he teamed up with a Hammond B3 cat in Kansas City named Chris Hazelton. And they came to do a reimagining of Huey Lewis's Sports because they toured 15 years ago and there was a CD stuck in the van they were in, and it was Huey Lewis and the News of Sports, and they mused about doing a jazz treatment. And after all of this time they've come back to it and they played it live and it sounded really good.
There's a lot of good songs there,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's great. It sounds really good. My brother passed away, and my sister-in-law gave me just I was over there, and she just said, "Here, take these CDs," and one of them was Small World
Yeah.
by Huey Lewis, and which I hadn't really heard. And so I started listening to that, and there's some great songs there.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
believe I can absolutely believe that. And that sounds like a great thing too.
Yeah.
You said tenor and Hammond organ.
Yeah, yeah, tenor Hammond, and I believe they had a rhythm section. So I don't know what their end up because they recorded it after the live shows in Kansas, or yeah, after the shows here. So I'm not sure how it transpired, but it seems like they're gonna have a full band.
Well, okay, well, fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it'd be good. Something to look for. So you mentioned Huey, you've mentioned Chuck Mangione. The beauty of this jazz world is that you get these older acclaimed cats that like touch on the younger players and inspire them and lead them along. In your life, now you've been at this for a while. What do you try to impart on young players that you get around about all the experience you've had?
Well, I think, I had somebody approach me not that long ago, and they sent me a tape. And of course, I'm dating myself. They sent me a digital file, and and I I listened to it, and I thought it was really good. And I got back to them, and I said, "Listen," I said, "I think you're really good." And the guy said, "Oh, you want to join my band?" And I said, "Well, no." And then he got disappointed. And I said, "Don't be disappointed. Let me tell you something that I wish somebody had told me when I was starting out. You got to find the right people. Find the right people who really believe in your project, because I put a band together, and I just asked the best players I could find in Ottawa to be in the band. Next thing you know, we've got national airplay in Canada. We've got a tour going to England, and half the guys in the band quit because they didn't want to bother going on the road. And so I had to scramble to keep it all going. And so I said to this guy, I'm telling you that I think you're good, and that's the best that I can do for you is to go ahead and do that. Do your thing. I think you're good, but you have to find the people who are the right people to work with you on your project, the people who really believe in your project, and they'll stick with you. And you don't know what the future will bring, so find the people who are really going to work with you. That's your next step. And once you get that together, then start producing your music. And so I think that's, find out who you are,
Yeah.
you know try not to, just like in life, right? You need to discover who you are.
Yeah.
Well, you need to do that with music because it's another journey, and the people you work with is another marriage,
Certainly is. Heart of Hearts is the new album. If anybody wants to get a copy, I'm sure it's out streaming, but if they want to actually benefit you the most, where can they go?
Bandcamp. I'm on
Cool.
Bandcamp. Yeah.
Right on.
Right.
And then live shows, anything else in your world, where can people go?
Well, I'm in Ottawa right now, and we've got a CD release coming up. I'm waiting for the festival season to kick in, and I'm thinking, maybe I'll try to tour. I haven't really I've just been starting to think that maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
So I'm starting that process. So we'll see what happens.
I love it. Steve, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to meet you.
Neon Jazz.